I am Allie Chaggy Starr. I'm a Mills MBA alum and met Carrie, the conference producer, when I was in school, and we have been partners in crime producing these conferences and talking about workforce and equity for several years now. So I'm really excited to be here at this year's conference. I'm also a Fuse Core Executive Fellow, and I'm currently working at the City of Oakland on a workforce development alignment study, a landscape analysis, and I've been interviewing people all over the sector to learn more about how we can be in better alignment. And I'm a longtime Bay Area organizer working at the intersection of racial justice, economic prosperity, and climate equity. Today's topic was driven by this need to address the divide between equity and sustainability, which are both essential to a future that's going to work for everyone. And we're really interested in talking about how those who are hurt first and worst by climate change and pandemics and economic adversity may be well prepared for quality career pathways in the clean economy. Also wanting to check in, how might we avoid the cost to BIPOC communities if cities wait too long to develop programs that support those who've been historically left out of emerging economies, especially with imminent statewide zero-emission resolutions and cities transitioning away from fossil fuels? How might we collaborate and focus investments and prioritize future-facing programs that lift up workers, the economy, and the health of our planet? And today I am joined by leaders in the field who are all addressing various aspects of these questions. Julia Hatton, President and CEO of Rising Sun Center for Opportunity. I've been a huge fan for years of your organization. Alexandra Shade, who is Workforce Development Manager at Grid Alternatives, another incredibly innovative organization with a national footprint now, if not international. Joseph Billingsley, or AKA Jab, who is the Senior Sports Services Manager at Civicorps, which is the first conservation corps in California. And hopefully we'll be joined by Paul Francis, who is the CEO and founder of Kidget, an electric vehicle supply equipment manufacturer that also focuses on workforce development. So first I want to open it up and have Julia start us off with answering a few questions, if you would be willing to share your name and your role and the mission of your organization and what programs you're offering. And if you would be willing to say a few words about what drove you to this purposeful career, given this is a conference that's focusing on purpose and values. We'll mention that Julia Hatton hails from Chicago. She's lived in 5 states during her adult life and worked in healthcare, IT, economic development, and in developing a statewide weatherization and healthy homes program in Connecticut before starting at Rising Sun in Oakland as director back in 2012, where she has led program, policy, and strategy work at the organization before becoming CEO in 2020. We're so thrilled with your leadership, Julia. Please feel free to share a little bit about you and your organization now.
Sure. Thank you so much for the introduction. It is wonderful to be here. As you mentioned, I'm Julia Hatton. I'm the CEO at Rising Sun Center for Opportunity, and Rising Sun is a workforce development organization. We have offices in Oakland and Stockton, and we serve the greater California Bay Area. We've been doing work to build career pathways for economic equity and climate resilience since 1994. And we do that mostly through job training and employment programs for youth and adults, so workforce development. And our sort of unique focus is at this intersection of building individual and community resilience, combating climate change, and building economic equity. We have 2 primary programs that we operate. One is called Climate Careers, and the other is Opportunity Build. And I'm happy to share more about both or either of those as we go. Climate Careers is a youth employment, direct employment social enterprise model where we hire and train youth from low-income households to provide free energy efficiency services to residents across the greater Bay Area. So this is an approach that's more about preparing youth for the world of work through direct paid experience and career exploration. And then we also have Opportunity Build, which is a training and job placement program for adults facing barriers to employment. And this is about preparing people for careers in union construction, helping them get those jobs, helping them keep those jobs, removing barriers, and really helping folks access jobs that they can live on and build long-term careers and wealth on. And in terms of what brought me to the work, gosh, it's I was living in, my husband and I had moved to Connecticut. He was going to business school, and I had to find something to support us while he was in school. And I really didn't know what it was going to be. I had been doing economic development. I really liked that work. And was lucky enough to find an opportunity at the local gas and electric utility company. They had a grant from the U.S. Department of Energy to provide, to create a statewide weatherization and healthy homes program. And so I had the opportunity to build that program from scratch and work with a lot of different partners across the state. And then we had the opportunity to move to California, and I kind of realized that this space was my passion. I came into it more from a climate and sustainability perspective. I've, never considered myself to be sort of a single issue person, but I felt like if there was going to be one thing, it was going to be climate. So I was doing informational interviewing. I kept hearing about Rising Sun, applied for a job here, and was lucky enough to get it. But I will say that what has kept me in the work is the people side of the equation, right? Is really about the impact of climate on people and vice versa, and looking, and increasingly the workforce development and economic equities piece is what really drives me today.
Thank you, Julia. That's perfect. Alex, if you would be willing to share a little about you, I'm going to share your bio, at least a little bit of it. Alex graduated from MIT with a BS in mechanical engineering and has a background in renewable energy, STEM education for youth, and international development. She's a San Diego native. She returned to California to pursue her interest in inclusive, sustainable technology and came to Grid Alternatives in 2019 through their Civicorps Fellowship Program. Please welcome Alex.
Hi, it's nice to see everyone again, and also to talk to all of you that are here with us. So I can talk a little bit about my journey, and then I'll talk about Grid Alternatives as a whole. So I, like Ali just shared, I started out pursuing mechanical engineering in college. That's how I became interested in renewable energy in general. I took a class where we were learning about solar technology and wind, and that became really interesting to me. I've always been pretty interested in technology, and I knew renewable energy was a growing industry. I then started learning more about sustainable technologies in general, but also having a lens of equity when talking about sustainable technologies. One, I think, big thing that happens in engineering, as someone who studied engineering, is that a lot of solutions are very cool and very exciting and groundbreaking, but it doesn't solve problems for people who need the most amount of help and the most amount of resources and access. So a lot of new technology is pretty limiting or pretty isolating for people who can't afford it. It can be very expensive. And so I kind of wanted to pursue renewable energy, but with more of an equity lens. So I was trying to look for organizations that did that. And that's how I found Grid Alternatives. I'm from California. I went to school in Boston. So I knew I wanted to move back to California, which was very convenient because that's the largest industry for solar. So that was just like a luck on my part. And so I found Grid Alternatives and knew they were a nonprofit organization doing solar. I didn't know about all the other things they did until after I joined. But I joined their Civicorps Fellowship Program, which is a year-long workforce development program. It's kind of a professional development program where you get to work in a department at Grid, and it's a really big learning opportunity. You get professional development funds to develop new skills and kind of learn a new field. So I didn't really know anything about workforce development as a field. I had a lot of experience doing teaching, but it was mostly with youth. And then I learned a little bit more about vocational teaching when I went to Greece in college. I was teaching more like woodworking and like hands-on skills workshops for youth. It was older youth, so it was mostly teenage boys who were mostly unaccompanied minors in Athens. And so we were running programs through that. And so I was learning more about teaching people skills that can help them get jobs with limited education. And so that was really groundbreaking for me and really gratifying for me. And so I wanted to do something that had the same sort of feeling, but also I knew I wanted to go back to California. I found great alternatives, did workforce development in my fellowship. I was a workforce development fellow, and I really didn't know as much as I know now, obviously, but I didn't really know what I was getting into when I started, but I found out it was really fulfilling. And I also knew I really liked teaching. And so my first year in my fellowship, I got to teach a lot of people how to use tools and how to install solar. And so that was something that I found really exciting. And I ended up being hired on after my fellowship. It was in 2020 that I finished. So what a wild time to join a new organization in the fall of 2020. But I've been there ever since, and I've kind of moved up in my responsibilities and what I do now. And so now I'm more in charge of actually managing the training programs that we do and developing a new one. We're trying to launch a more intensive one and trying to get funding. So the workforce development team at Great Alternatives, specifically I'm in the Oakland office. So I'm based in Oakland, and that is where GRID is founded. Great Alternatives was founded in Oakland, but we have 6 regional offices throughout California. We are in Colorado and Washington, D.C., and we also are international, which Ali kind of alluded to. So we're in Mexico, Nepal, and Nicaragua. We started off just doing solar for no cost for low-income clients and low-income residents in those areas. We expanded to start doing job training, and then we also now do policy work and clean mobility work, which is more about access to clean cars. That's less what I do. So I mostly manage job training programs, working with job seekers looking to develop solar install skills and preparing for opportunities in the solar job market, and also partnering with other local organizations for collaborative community engagement.
Thank you. They are so lucky to have you. It's wonderful. And it's great to see how much the organization has grown. I think I was at the very first gala event when there were 4 employees. So it's just incredible, the need and the excellent organization that's been able to scale. Next, let's hear from JAB, or Joseph Billingsley, who is the Senior Support Services Manager at Civicorps, if you'd be willing to share a little bit about yourself as well.
Sure. Thank you, Ali, and hello, everyone. Again, my name is Joseph Billingsley. I am Support Services Manager at Civicorps, which is a local conservation corps located in Oakland, California. And we serve 18 to 26-year-old young adults. Our mission is to re-engage young adults to earn high school diploma if they don't have it, move into colleges if they need that support, gain job skills, and embark upon family-sustaining careers. Our tagline is transforming lives and landscapes since 1983. The work that the job training is involving conservation work in Alameda and Contra Costa County. Our participants are learning to use tools that reduces the chance of fire spreading or starting, fire abatement work, reduction of the fuel for a fire if it does break out. They're learning and get certified in use of chainsaws and power pruners and brush cutters, clearing out waterways, and different agencies in both Alameda County and Contra Costa County are clearing out our flood control districts, East Bay Mud, regional parks, and fire services in Oakland also have asked us to have our crews do that kind of work. What drew me to this work, previously I was serving young adults in an area that was really focused on their current personal emergencies, and it didn't necessarily relate to the conditions or the factors that contributed to their current predicament. So I learned about what the conservation corps are doing to serve the needs of young adults in a more impactful way while engaged in environmental work. So we have a number of social enterprises that, as I mentioned, go into our areas and do environmental enhancement and mitigation work for 11 public service agencies, public agency sponsors. I'll provide that training. We also have a recycling social enterprise where we provide commercial recycling services to Oakland businesses while we are training young adults. And we also, and with those employers that we are partnering with, we set up lines of training and internships to get the young adults an opportunity to have work experience with those agencies that sponsor our work to get into livable wage careers. My thought is that education, training, and exposure are key to preparing young adults for livable wage careers, while they're exposing and engaging the employers in the conservation field to remove those obstacles and resistance that serve to exclude the BIPOC community from consideration for employment. And I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much for allowing me to do the intro.
Thank you, Jab. And also, to mention, Jab did practice law for 16 years and then moved over and transitioned to serving juveniles and adults and doing this direct service work. And thank goodness for the work that you're doing. And I was recently at a Civicorps event that was so moving and touching. And it's like when you're that close to it, sometimes it's hard to remember, how beautiful it is for people who are witnessing it from the outside. I have the pleasure next of introducing Paul Francis, who is the CEO of Kidget, an electric vehicle supply equipment manufacturer that also creates the operating software and is committed to training and job creation. Paul has been an unstoppable force since 2009, my words, to create clean energy solutions to our transportation infrastructure, and has built electric charging projects and partnerships across the nation. And I am personally hoping we can bring his company and model to Oakland. I'm crossing my fingers. Let's hear a little bit from you, Paul, about your work.
Ali, you're a rock star MC. I swear the intro was incredible. Yeah, for real. Kidget, I am the CEO co-founder. Keep It Green Tech, Keep It Green Transit, Keep It Green Team. And that's what we are here and what we focus on. It's teamwork. So the projects that we've done that Ali says that we're an unstoppable force has been none less than a full team effort. Rockstar engineers, rockstar advisors. And when you're looking at the projects we're conducting, especially in the EV charging space, I personally have been in the realm of electric vehicles since 2009, as she mentioned. Then we went on to conduct pilot projects with cities and municipals. And in 2011 and 2012, we did off-grid charging and vehicle-to-grid demonstrations for the Port of Long Beach. And our focus then was to have municipal fleets transition over to electric 10 years ago. And this was after the recession, so it made a lot of sense. However, the pain point we discovered was the charging infrastructure just wasn't adequate enough at the price point. So that's when we decided to make the pivot to become an original equipment manufacturer of level 2 charging stations with our own vertically integrated software system that has a back end, a kiosk, and a mobile app. And we knew that end-to-end control was important because now we're able to serve the customer in the way they would want. Then at the same time, that requires network, that requires staff. I mean, when you're doing projects, it's electrical installation. And so right now we have projects in Hollywood, fast forward to 2022. Projects in Hollywood recently received grants from the California Energy Commission to do vehicle-to-grid demonstrations at the University of Cal Riverside. We're at the University of Austin, University of Laverne. As you can see, there is a trend where we like to be. And then in addition to that, we're at multifamily locations, apartment complexes. A lot of folks in California do not own their home. Many people in America live in a multifamily dwelling situation. And 80% to 90% of charging since the pandemic happens at home. Universities have on-campus living and they're like workplace where 10% of the charging happens there. And I'm telling that story of how that works because when we're at university campuses, we actually work with the students to provide internships. And these students are doing research, they're doing data collection. And then when you look at the lower level of high school in our community of San Bernardino County, we're in the Chaffee Joint Union School District. In 2014, when we made the pivot, we were asked to conduct internships with juniors and seniors. We had a business internship, engineering internship. Up until maybe last year, maybe 2 years ago, our high school business team made us the #1 Instagram charging company in the world with the most followers, albeit 5,000, but we had more than others. Then the engineering students had an opportunity to build, test the charger on their own. and get some handiwork. And at the end, we gave letters of recommendation. Many of them went on to four-year colleges and had success. Then we were asked by the state of California to say, hey, can you create a curriculum around a job training program for EV charging technicians? So then in 2020, we partnered with LA Clean Tech Incubator, another company that you guys may have heard of that does EV training, and we created what I like to call electric vehicle network training program. 2 cohorts, 60 students. The first cohort was pre-pandemic in February for things got crazy. And 30 students all graduated, received a stipend at the end for $1,500. And I don't know about everyone here, but I received a bill when I was done with school. So we thought it was a pretty good opportunity. Why Ali says we want to bring the model up to Oakland, because a third of them were recently incarcerated. Our rock star student fellow that happened to present in front of donors and everyone that came in from LADWP had been in jail for 10 years. And he remembered, and he just had gotten out 3 weeks before the program. They all received an OSHA certification. They learned the ins and outs of not just our chargers, but our competitors. And it wasn't electrical training for you who's wondering, how do they get their journeyman's license? That takes time. It was networking, IT work. 50 to 60% of chargers out in the field, including our competitors, those you may have heard of, they're inoperable. And often it's not electrical, it's networking. So when you're having people have these jobs, they're 30, 40 bucks an hour with skill sets that they can immediately after 8 weeks turn into a job, get hired, get more than a living wage. And so that's what we did in the second cohort. And fast forward to today now, 2 years later, we're looking to expand that model across the country, partner with organizations like we have here, and see how we can actually help communities that are untapped so that you can have economic wealth and they can contribute to the infrastructure that's going to be put in their communities. And so at Kidget, we like to say we're reshaping 100 years of human habit. It's not just through technology, but it's changing the lives of the people we serve. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Paul. And I think the reason I pulled all of you together for this conversation is because I am drawn to people who are working at the intersection and creating a multiplier effect in your work. And all of you have just spoken to that. My first question is really looking at how do we expand? How do we adopt new practices? And the challenge before us is enormous. You know, we're all doing this beautiful work, but you know, California is on fire every fall. You know, we're experiencing the mass impact of climate change. And, you know, we just got a little bit of rain and we're all celebrating, but the trend is to drier and drier and, you know, more indications of, you know, lack of access to food, refugeeism. We're dealing with a huge issue that is not being tackled at the federal level that, you know, which should have happened many years ago. So it's organizations like yourself that are taking this on at the grassroots level and building solutions from the ground up. What is needed to expand? What needs to happen to address the challenge of equity within the green economy?
Money.
All right.
Really, and how it's allocated properly. Everyone's excited with all this new money coming in, especially in climate tech. But the scary thing for us is, will it go to your usual suspects? And are we allocating it properly where the infrastructure is needed the most? Not just because it's underserved and they've been left out. Those are real things. But because in order for us to hit our climate goals, we have to have everyone participate. In a lot of the communities, the funding is allocated to upgrade the infrastructure, to participate in electrification future. So for us, it's asking federal and state levels to allocate properly and make sure it's earmarked for what we call tier 3 infrastructure projects in untapped communities.
How about others? Thoughts about challenges and next steps?
If I may, I would add, thank you, Paul, for certainly resources is necessary for things to happen. But, you know, and as Paul touched on, the advocacy and that community engagement at the neighborhood level, city level, county, state, and federal level. So an acknowledgement of what the past economic development and growth has historically been detrimental to the BIPOC communities. and moving forward with that factor at the forefront as we're making policy, decisions about what can occur as we're moving forward and developing, building, removing, etc. I think we'll make articles and that's all involved in that, and there needs to be a large voice in order to get the changes happening.
Thank you. Alex, thoughts on that?
Yeah, just kind of adding to what both of them said, I wholeheartedly agree. Intentional policy is really important. I think as much as no matter where you work, if you're working in, equity, if you're working in renewable energy, your job is political. And so even if you like to say you don't work in politics, a lot of what you are able to do is driven by politics and heavily influenced by politics. So a lot of times politicians, whatever, people in power will say, we're going to achieve these goals because it sounds good on a ballot and because it sounds good to be elected. And there's not really intention about how that will actually happen. Where are we getting the money? Where is the money going to? If we say we're investing $5 million in new jobs, but we don't have any details about what that looks like or what communities are getting those jobs and why those communities need those jobs. We need more community engagement when writing policy and just figuring out not just solutions that sound good, but solutions that actually fix the problem. A lot of policy is kind of solution driven versus actually addressing the issue that they're trying to solve. If you don't actually figure out what you're trying to solve, the solution might not fit for that.
Indeed. Julia?
Yeah, all of those things. And, I think, you're talking about intersectionality, Allie, and how we have both an economic crisis, a racial equity crisis, a climate crisis. And so I think the real opportunity is for these solutions that address more than one problem at once. And from where I sit, I think job quality and access, right, is one of these things that can really move the needle in multiple areas. So when we're making investments and all this money is coming from the federal government, we're talking about job creation, we need to be really intentional about the types of jobs that are being created and who has access to those jobs and where those jobs can take people, right? We don't just want them to be jobs, right? We want them to be these lifelong careers. And I think it requires investment and incentives and intentional structure to build in things like labor standards to these programs and these and investments that are coming down. And I think historically, there hasn't necessarily been a willingness to look at that. But my hope is that given, in the context of the Great Recession or the Great Awakening, as we're talking, like that there will be more and more awareness of how important it is to pay people good wages and to offer benefits and to offer upward mobility and worker protection and worker voice and organizing and all of those things. So that's what I'm seeing.
Thank you. I'm wondering a little bit about what everyone talks about, in this city and beyond, how siloed we are, and that there is such a deep need for collaboration, but because CBOs or providers are often going after the same recruits or, similar recruits, and we're going after similar dollars. And we're all trying to get to the same outcomes, but we're working within our kind of realm, even though we're friendly and our work overlaps. How can we expand collaboration in a way that feels authentic, that doesn't add more work? Because lots of times we know partnerships require more capacity to manage. So any successes you've had, I see all of you as organizations that have partnered really well. So any words to the wise and where you see that expanding. And Jab, do you want to start?
Yes, thank you. One of the things that we are seeing, and I say this, that we've been in existence coming up on 40 years. We've had some sponsors that have been working with us since 1983. But one of the things that Michael Bush had mentioned early on in one of the opening sessions today about a great place to work, a way to and see if people are going to places where folks are like them and look like them. And those have served to be barriers for agencies, public agencies, that our young folks would be able to get into. So we're thankfully, we have a good collaboration for the East Bay Municipal Utilities District. East Bay Mud handles our water, but there are positions within East Bay Mud that are, career, family-sustaining careers that pay really good money. That the doors have been closed to a lot of the BIPOC community up until this time. But we are working with them, meeting on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, I was just in a meeting with one of the folks at East Bay Mud before coming on to this one, ways in which we can reach the communities, provide training, the internships, provide the skills for them to be competitive in the application process, and getting them into those positions. And we've been fortunate in getting a few of our young folks just this week start with East Bay Mud training positions that will last a year. Similarly with waste management here in Oakland also, we have a recycling social enterprise where we've had a number of our young folks based on that relationship with the city of Oakland and waste management to set up a traineeship that leads into apprenticeships that lead into permanent employment with waste management. I talked to one of our folks, alumni, yesterday, stopped by to say hello and just, thankful for what he received at the Corps, for the introduction, the kinds of things that he has accomplished with him and his family, has bought a home, and is very thankful what the Corps is doing, wants to give back and spread that experience. Tech Exchange is a nonprofit organization in Oakland that receives the e-waste, takes it apart and has a goal of putting computer in every room in Oakland. That's another collaboration. Some of our core members go into their warehouses, learn about the computers by taking them apart, bringing them in and providing the skills. And with a combination of college courses, we've had a number who've moved on so there needs to be more of the feeder or referral line to provide that work experience, but also in terms of the employers working with their staff about not being resistant, recognizing what the obstacles are to those who they see they're coming being trained, potentially working, that don't necessarily look like them. So it needs work within the employer setting in terms of working with those who are coming into the workforce, who would like to come into the workforce, so it was more welcoming.
Thank you, Jeb. I know I wanted to mention the City of Oakland has a race and equity department. And if people haven't read the race and equity indicators report, it's really helpful to see how the city is thinking about this. And, it's late coming, but at least there is that sensibility in Oakland that those who've been the most extracted from and hurt by our current pollution-based economy ought to be first in line, or at least have the opportunities for quality careers. Julia, thoughts on that? Partnerships, collaboration?
Yeah. I mean, there is literally nothing we do at Rising Sun that isn't based in partnership. I mean, our youth program, our emerging policy work, our adult programs, whether it's recruitment, outreach, referrals, all types of things. I think something that I was taught really early on in my career that has been that sort of a mantra I've had is that credit is infinitely divisible, right? So I think that's a really important way of approaching partnership. And and then the other thing I'll say is starting with your mission and starting with your participants and what they want and need. And I think starting there can be a really powerful and authentic way of building partnership, is understanding where, what is missing for them, what's going really well, and then designing partnership around that, which then requires just having a really good understanding of the landscape and trying to just keep in touch with what else is going on, and not duplicating efforts, because that's the other thing that I think we can run into.
Absolutely. How about grid alternatives, Alex? Any thoughts?
Sure. Kind of similar to Julia, just centering community needs at the foundation of partnerships is pretty important. I mean, yes, it's great to say that you by yourself or you and just your org, influenced or were able to reach 100 people, but you might have been able to reach 300 people if you had partnered with someone else. Everyone is working with different communities, but also kind of the same communities. And so, yes, it is great to have, a really good invested interest in a community, but if you can partner with another one, they might be able to bring things that your organization can't, or reach people that might not be a great fit for your services or your organization. So just like a willingness to adapt and change based on those community needs. If a new need emerges, which happens often, having a community partner, having other people that are doing similar work doesn't have to be competitive. It can be collaborative, and you can reach more people collectively. And going with that, just like a transparency in working with partners, be honest about what you can reasonably do or what you can reasonably commit to, so that you're not blindsiding organizations or committing to more things than you can actually do, or trying to take on too much work. I just think it's a lot stronger of a pull. And also you can go for, funding. You can get more funding if you partner with other organizations in a lot of instances. So just kind of thinking of partners or organizations doing similar work more as resources and opportunities versus, oh, they're a competitor because they're doing similar things.
Absolutely. Paul, do you want to share from the industry side? You have developed so many key partnerships, and I'm amazed by the scale at which you've developed, even with all of the barriers to building industry in this country. Can you share a little bit more about how that's worked, what you've learned?
Yeah, it's a culture we've built. It's about just being kind and caring. And I think because it's something we love to do, you feel that energy from our team. That's why we've been fortunate to partner with Lacey on that job training program. I was also had the opportunity to be part of LA City Green Jobs, and part of that um, report that Lacey did together with them. And I remember coming back. Our company's part of several accelerators, one of the tops in the world. And we came back from the accelerator really feeling ourselves, think we're with other climate tech companies. And we're with the top 10, and these companies are nearly valued at $1 billion. So we come back, and we're fortunate to sit in some of these rooms. And I remember, like Alex was saying, this is just, what's the problem first, instead of spoon feeding what we should be doing, what we think we should be doing. And one thing I realized was when you ask the right questions and you don't use buzzwords and you're intentional, a lot of these rooms, they have buzzwords. And I remember the word I kept hearing was IoT. And I remember coming back from the accelerator for 10 days. Not one of the 80 companies talked about IoT. And so it was so funny to me, the juxtaposition, how people are making decisions for the community, and they're not even speaking with the companies who they need to help make the change. And so what I've learned is when you bring in the private sector and the public sector together, you're able to give an insight. Being a part of Cal Seed's board for several years, instead of wanting to receive their funding, gave me insight on how decisions are made. So we were a little bit more intentional with wanting to be in the room with decision makers as we grew our business before we started generating the revenue, so we could build a solid foundation. And that's why we're still here, and we have less chargers than charge for, because green jobs aren't just blue collar, but they're white collar jobs. So they kept bringing up IoT. I said, let's just focus on the software side of it, because software is IoT. And there's so many Black and brown kids in these communities going to STEM camps. And let's just not look at them as electricians and blue collar workers, but they're at the university level. They have their graduate's degrees in software engineering and computer programming. And they have to come home and live in South LA still. And so for us, it's how do we define these dynamic opportunities, not just for people who want to use their hands, but people who want to use their hands and their brains to create on a computer. And so when we start speaking in that way, we found that more people were receptive, and we were able to develop partnership through that, because now green jobs are combined, and now you have a full arc and opportunity for people to partner with.
Yeah. You've made me think of a question for Julia and Alex around decarbonization and solar. And I know Rising Sun did a pilot program with 120 youth, I think it was. And I know there were some really important takeaways about not just looking at sector, but looking at work arenas and what industry was really interested in. And then I know, Alex, we've talked a little bit about sort of barriers to, and I think Julie, we've talked about also barriers to high road jobs in the solar economy. Is there anything that you can say that how we can transform that industry to, one, create pathways that are viable in the solar economy? That's a big question.
We don't work as much in solar. So Alex, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So, I mean, one of the main barriers is that it's a very growing industry, and a lot of solar companies are hiring for solar installers, for example, and they want people to have experience in solar by the time that they get there, but they don't want to pay to train people. And so you can't expect people to have experience in an industry when you're also not willing to train, but you want to hire a bunch of people and you don't have connections to training, and you're not, as a solar installer, say, that hires people. If you're not investing in training or willing to pay for training or partner with organizations that are doing training, but you also expect trained people that to just show up for you, like that's one of the main barriers. There's also just a lot of politics involved in solar. And I mean, a lot of solar companies, for example, don't want to hire people that have any sort of criminal background, which eliminates a large group of people that are willing to learn these skills and are willing to do these jobs and need jobs. But if people aren't willing to hire them, then you're just missing out on opportunities. And so those are kind of two examples of some of the barriers.
Yeah, thanks for saying that.
Yeah, and I mean, just to give Rising Sun our experience as an organization, we used to focus on preparing adults for careers in weatherization and home performance and residential solar, all of which are things that need to happen in this country for our climate and that we really support and believe in. But as a workforce development organization, we had to switch our focus because those opportunities, at least in the Bay Area, were often keeping people in poverty. And so we shifted to becoming a union pre-apprenticeship program and focusing on the union building trades. And part of it too is, like you're saying, Alexandra, is we work with a lot of folks in reentry and they couldn't get solar jobs, so a lot of this is really the industry needing to make a change. And, then it becomes a question of what is the role of public agencies and government and policy in incentivizing and promoting that change. This is not a new issue, right? The residential construction sector has historically been low road, and there are reasons for that. But whenever we can find opportunities to build out things like community workforce agreements or project labor agreements, or incorporate labor standards or targeted hire or local hire requirements, those are all things that I think help support equity and help address some of these barriers. And then, of course, on the other side, you need things like accountability for all of those things and making sure you're doing tracking and reporting and all of those pieces.
I have another question, but does anyone else want to comment in that area? And then we'll open it up. Yeah.
One of the barriers we face is when it comes to just infrastructure in general, it's mainly coming from a lack of projects. There's a lot of job training programs out there, especially now, but it's after the training, it's placement. And so for us, that's why partnership has been critical. Because if I can't get you a charging job, I can get you a solar job, I can get you a battery storage job. And so I think that's been the difficulty, because climate tech is still fairly new, as Alex mentioned. And solar's been around for decades, but it's now a growing industry for the past, few years. But there's still not enough projects for people to consistently stay with that one company. So that's what we're seeing.
Absolutely. Jab, do you want to say something about that? You're muted.
The community approach.
It's choppy for some reason. It's chopping up a little bit. But try again. Let's see. Maybe an internet issue. Maybe chat in your comment. But it's been a little choppy, and it's getting a little worse. Okay, you put it in the chat. Thank you. I think I got that. Perfect. We have such a huge challenge ahead of us. Van Jones from Green for All and Reform Alliance often talk about, the Titanic as a model. There's inequity on the Titanic, who gets to ride on top and who gets the life rafts, et cetera. And then the, climate change being the iceberg, so we have to solve both the inequity issue on the boat that is Earth and climate change at the same time. And often that feels just too overwhelming, I think, to people outside the industry or outside the conversation. How do we make solving both issues, which I don't think we win either one without each other? They go together. That's, to me, there's no such thing as green without a deep green and equitable solution. That's how it's going to work. And climate change is a relationship problem with each other and the Earth, ultimately, So how do we make these topics more compelling, more sticky? Lots of times I'm working in workforce development and people just kind of glaze over when I start talking about what I do, and I think it's fascinating, but, how do we make both climate change, which just feels so overwhelming, and workforce development sexy and hot? Any thoughts on shifting narratives?
More money. Money's always sexy and hot.
For marketing and
marketing, knowing that there's a pool of funding for organizations like GRID, like knowing that funding is there to innovate, right? Climate tech's supposed to be new and fun and exciting. And so when there's funding there to innovate and make programs more interesting, when you're looking at how do you make climate tech sexy, I can't drive a Chevy Bolt to go pick up my date, right? I don't want to do that EV. It's not a cool looking car. And style and aesthetics matter. And it goes under mentioned. And so if you want that to happen, I think when you're talking about funding, you're supporting a certain level of a lifestyle for someone. Right now, our CTO doesn't own a car. It's not about having an EV. It's about reducing your carbon footprint at our business. So he'll rent a Toro, he'll drive a Chevy Bolt around, but then he might want to take the i8 and rent that one for a day, or a Model 3. So I think what we're saying is innovative solutions, how you curate your lifestyle, does start with funding and knowing that those options are available so you can take advantage.
Right on. Other thoughts?
Well, maybe it's about focusing more on the why and the impact, right? Rather than the how. I think the workforce development is how, right? But the reason that we're ultimately doing this work is to address inequity. It's to build wealth. It's to build power. And so maybe, if we can talk more about the potential of this like big, beautiful future that we see, maybe that's another way to get it to stick.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I'm in that game with you, Julia. I like it. Any other thoughts? What are your groups doing to build out your story, your narrative?
Yeah, just kind of thinking about potential. I mean, the outcomes that we're talking about are not just, it's not like silo. This is not an individual, an island of like, well, when we have more workers or more successful careers that only they benefit, like this is good for the economy, this is good for the services that people are in, this is good for the employers that are trying to hire. Like the work that you're doing, workforce development, is pretty wide in its impact. Not everyone really thinks about it like that. Like, oh, if I invest more in this, then I also can benefit from it. Obviously, that's kind of a selfish outlook, but sometimes people don't care about things unless they affect them personally, right? So if you're saying, oh, we're going to have more electric vehicles, we're going to have more solar, we're going to be less reliant on fossil fuels, then you wouldn't be having to spend as much money on gas, which everyone's complaining about. So just thinking about long-term how this can be beneficial for society as a whole, the society that you're in or your immediate community or the community that you interact with, and thinking about it more in terms of that instead of, oh, well, I don't know why I would pay an extra however many dollars to help this person get trained in a job. Like there's long-term benefits overall as a society if we invest in communities, whether or not we see results tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I'm writing little comments here, and Jab is saying we've seen progress from advocacy and activism that demands inclusion. Absolutely. Any questions from our listeners? I could talk to these guys all day, but any other thoughts out there are absolutely welcomed. And if you have questions for each other, it's the power of group mind in action. Did we cover everything in an hour?
Well, yesterday, so my network, you see me changing location. So I just flew in, and I was fortunate enough, I got asked on Tuesday to be at a meeting at the White House that was yesterday.
Wow.
With other Black climate tech leaders. So we got to sit in at the White House yesterday and discuss the issues we're discussing here. Untapped communities, workforce training, equity, and how do we actually get that done at the highest level? And how do we implement that here with us at the grassroots level? And one thing that they were shocked by was the lack of preparedness we all are for this change of electrification that our well-intended elected officials and leaders speak of. And just the lack of preparedness, not just with infrastructure, with job training, with people there's certain opportunities where I can't hire because that person isn't there yet. Or there's just so many, there's such a disconnect that we discovered yesterday at the highest level. And I see it at the city level and at the local level, when Joseph was saying earlier. And so for me, my question to the group is, at the local level, at the state level, how are you bringing attention to these issues? And what successes are you having? And you have any tips that are actually seeping through? Yes, I'm the money guy again, because in order for this to happen, workforce term, I'm putting money in people's pockets. So at the end of the day, those solutions do help in packaging it.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm seeing at the City of Oakland, just to share this, that I see that government doesn't have the capacity or the time or the impetus always to highlight solutions. So there's always this sense of, a culture of complaint against anybody, be it industry or government or anyone who's seen as holding the purse. And when I'm at government, at the government level, there's like 3 women trying to get it all done in a tiny office and managing, these state dollars and regulations. And it's very bureaucratic and time consuming. And these are innovative staff members who would like to be able to do more. And so one of the things I think was we need to shine a light on each other's work and also shine a light on the good stuff that cities are doing, that industry's doing, that our CBOs are doing. And I don't think it should be up to, one department to shine light, or just, Grid Alternatives to tell the story, but let's all tell Grid Alternatives story. Let's all tell the story of Civicorps Rising Sun Kitchen, every chance I get, I am, but I tend to be kind of a cheerleader. I'm always, telling the story of the work that you're doing, because that's what gets me up every day. And I think if we can build those kinds of bridges and market for each other, we can expand outcomes, perhaps. And it looks like we've got about 5 minutes. And any other thoughts about how people can plug into what you're doing? And feel free, if you have a recent article or anything people should know about. I did put your links up earlier in the chat, but feel free to post again if there's anything people should know or ways people can support you and learn more about what you're up to and help you get more money. Can you guys still see me okay?
No, you disappeared.
Oh, that's weird.
We can hear you.
Okay, well, I can see me, but maybe there's some East Oakland internet thing going on. It can't possibly be my fault. I don't know why it's off, but I'm not sure. But I'm glad you can hear me, and I am so thankful for all of you. Feel free to post whatever you need in the chat. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, I said, Jane said one needs to go to full screen and then back again to see the screen. I know Mills College is, very focused on social equity and has very high percentage students of color and women, and focuses on jobs and opportunity in social impact. And I'd love to see, and Presidio is really focused on sustainability, but it'd be great to see our community colleges and our universities team up, where one organization or college is strong in one area to team up with a college that's working in another area, so that we can build out both sectors simultaneously. I know Mills was a huge impact for a lot of us on this call, so let's hear it from Mills alum. I got my MBA at 50 years old, so just saying, they supported that as a single parent. Pretty cool. Yeah, thank you all for joining. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Shanti. Thank you, Jane and Lena. Let's keep talking. Let's keep figuring it out. We're going to be having a Green Jobs 2.0 conversation next Friday with some of the people who are here on this panel, and we'll circle back with some of the solutions and keep Mills in the loop. And yay to Presidio students. Let's keep doing this. Carol is a professor at the Mills MBA, by the way, and teaches operations and taught me everything I know about data sets, and has helped me, not be afraid of math. And I think that's a big deal. So thank you, Carol, for being on this call. And thanks to our panelists and everyone who's listening. Any final words? All right.
So just an honor to be here with my fellow panelists here, all doing incredible work. And thank you, Allie, for pulling us together.
To be continued. The work doesn't stop. Let's keep going.